Alrighty, so I know I've been promising to talk about the camera equipment that I use for real estate, and I've recently made a video just before the new year talking about why I switched to Fuji. And while I switched to Fuji, I also made some changes to my kit in 2021 that's helped me out dramatically, and a lot of this stuff is actually really cheap. I also want to update you on some of the gear that I've been using for the past 3 years now that has held up really well. So let's get started. So let's just get into the video. I know I promised that I was going to talk about this camera kit. So let's get into it with what I'm using for my main shooter for my real estate photos. So for my main camera, I am using the X-T3. Now this is a little bit older of a camera. It's roughly about 2.5, 3 years old by now. But honestly, the Fuji X-T3 still holds its value. Matter of fact, if you haven't picked one of these up, you probably missed out on some really great deals. At one point, these were $999, and I actually found this one on B&H as an open box for $799. And then I bought the battery grip for $250 as an open box. And this is just an absolutely great combination. Why did I switch to the Fuji X-T3 when I was shooting Sony? Well, for starters, I have dual SD card slots. So if I'm doing a really large property and I know I cannot afford to have any screw ups, I will actually write to both SD cards as a backup just in case. The second reason why is this battery grip really helps with the battery life. I literally charge this thing maybe once a week, which I think is pretty awesome. The autofocus on this is good when I need it to be good, when I use a lens that requires autofocus. The other thing is these dials up at the top are honestly invaluable. When you are shooting bracketed photos, you want to quickly be able to adjust your shutter or even your ISO in a blink. And to have to go through a touch screen like I used to have to do with Sony and fumble through the menu system meant I was touching the camera a little more than I necessarily wanted to. I can also go back and forth between a single shot and a bracketed shot. Now, why do I do that? Well, I shoot in Flambient. And I shoot 3 bracket shots and then I do a flash shot and I just sort of choose the best of the two. And I'm always gonna use that flash shot, but you can't shoot a flash shot with brackets. You have to go back to single in order to only get one flash pop. It's just sort of a rule of thumb with that. So this allows me to do that very, very efficiently. Now, if you just wanted this to be your only camera, this also has 4K 60 for video, and it has F-Log, which does really, really well, especially in low light situations. It also has the Eterna profiles built in, so you're always gonna get some really, really nice, pleasing colors, sometimes a little more stylistic than other cameras, but for the most part, you can't beat the Fuji X-T3, even in 2021. These things really hold their value, which says a lot about Fuji's build quality and design. And now for camera lenses for the Fuji, I do still use the Samyang 12mm f2 lens. Now this lens here specifically is super affordable and cheap. It's really sharp and it was 275 bucks. I still can't bring myself to buy a $1,000 Fuji 10mm lens. I think 12mm works. It is a little bit limited at times, but it does get the job done. There is one little slight quirk and nuance about this, is that when you have the aperture cranked down to f7, f8, you do get like sort of star patterns in lights unless you use a flash. So my recommendation is, if when all applicable, if a light is not all that interesting, just shut it off with this lens so you can avoid that weird pattern. Some agents won't care. Some agents will. For me, it bothers me more than it bothers them, but just something worth mentioning. Alrighty, so why did I switch to the Panasonic S5 for video then? Well, I'm actually shooting on another S5 filming this video, but I switched to Panasonic for a couple of reasons for video. For video, I always butted up against to some low light situations where it really required me to bump that ISO up. Now, honestly, nothing beat my Sony a7 III when it came to low light capability. It was just an absolute monster. I had a lot of confidence in Sony low light capability. And quite frankly, Panasonic is right there with it. This thing is a low light monster. I'm able to shoot in Vlog 10-bit 422, and I don't have to shoot in 4K, which I think is really important. Not having to shoot in 4K saves me a lot of time in post. And the reason why I don't shoot in 4K is because the 1080p files coming out of the S5 look really good. They're super sharp, they're super crisp. There's a lot of detail, a lot of color range and dynamic range in the Vlog. So I just don't really feel like I'm missing out on anything shooting in 1080p versus 4K. The other reality is most of my agents are going to take this, put it on Facebook, put this on Vimeo or something where 4K is not even going to be an option, nor would they really be able to take full advantage of that. So I shoot in 1080p with this. I could shoot 4K and it wouldn't be a problem. Now there is a slight crop factor in 4K 60, but that's more the reason why I do opt to shoot in 1080p with this. The image stabilization in this camera is just crazy. I find myself not having to use warp stabilizer all that often. When this camera is on a gimbal, it is the most smooth footage you have ever seen. Panasonic has always been known for their IBIS, and it's honestly really, really prevalent here. It looks amazing. Now the lens that I'm using with this is the 16-35. This is the Lumix lens, and it's a beast. It's an f4 lens, and you'd probably say, well, why wouldn't you go with a faster lens? And the reason why I'm not going with a faster lens is because in real estate, I really don't need it. I want to be able to see the foreground a little bit more. So those nice sort of detail shots, I have a different lens that I'll put on, like the 20 to 60 millimeter lens at f3. I'll put that on and be able to get some more tighter shots, or I'll switch over to like my 50 millimeter f1.8 and be able to get some tighter, more macro type shots. But yeah, this thing is just absolutely awesome. Battery life's good. Again, you get dual SD card slots, but Vlog has changed the game for me when it comes to color grading these real estate videos. And the auto white balance is really, really good on this. And anybody that says you shouldn't use auto white balance in real estate, well, you can. You can just go room to room, and if you have to toggle between the white balance, there's all these, very convenient buttons here, and I just get really great results. So very happy with this camera. Alrighty, so some constants that I've been using for the past year and a half now is the Godox 80-200 Pro. This is the flash that I use, and this is the trigger that I use. So this is the Godox, I believe this is the X Pro, and this is the F version because it's for Fuji. So I put this on top of my Fuji camera. You probably saw it when we were talking about the camera. And yeah, it lasts for a long time. I just put some alkaline batteries in there, and I haven't replaced these batteries in a heck of a long time. So it's lasted for a good while. Now the 8200 Pro, this flash is honestly more than enough for about, I would say, 80% of the houses that you go into. This is all you'll need. Now I did go ahead and put it with a pistol grip so I can hold it in my hand. It also has a ball end at the bottom because if you get like a holster, you can just sort of have it on your hip ready to go at any time. It's a pretty nice little touch. I did go ahead and put it in like a little rubberized thing, just in case if I drop it, I don't want to break this LCD screen. I've seen a couple of people break these, so put it in a nice little case will just sort of protect it a little bit longer. Now I did opt to go for the bare bulb head because, well, when I was using the Fresnel mount, gosh, this tongue twister. When I was using the Fresnel mount, I would keep getting like these little streaks in the photos, like there was a light leak on that mount, and I didn't feel like the light was spreading quite as evenly. And oddly enough, there was always an odd color cast. So when I switched to the bare bulb and I put this reflector on, this reflector just comes off, like you just unscrew this. It's super cheap. These are like $8. This is the same reflector I've had on here for the past, God, 1 year, I think now. And I need to get another one because I dented it, but I can probably just bend that back, no problem. This is the same bulb I started with too, and it's just held up perfectly. I literally have no complaints with this setup. I saw this in, I think it was Rich Baum's Facebook group. I saw somebody using this, and ever since I've been using this, I get really nice, even flash spread, and the photos look great. There's no crazy color cast and nothing to worry about. And this right here absolutely makes life so much easier. So about a year or so in, I have zero complaints for either one of these. All right, let's talk about the tripod I'm using because this is still the BREW tripod with the geared head. And this is the Mach 3 tripod. Now I've had this for exactly 3 years. I've tossed it around, I've beaten it up, and it honestly doesn't look all that bad for 3 years of use, which I think is pretty damn incredible. It is a little bit looser. I think at some point I do need to go ahead and tighten some of these screws. I think some screws are starting to come a little bit loose. Actually, they are coming actually a lot a bit loose. But again, that's to be expected after 3 years of hard and heavy use and in multiple homes. It's probably about time I service this thing. Now, the geared head itself makes life super, super easy when it comes to adjusting for shots. I can't stress this enough. If you are going to do real estate photography, invest in a good geared head because it's going to make lining up those shots and protecting your verticals so much easier than if you just try to use a video tripod, which isn't really all that conducive. This also really helps when you're in some tight spots. You can make this tripod a little bit more narrower, which can help in those really awkward and strange bathrooms. It's also fast to just pull the pins out and be able to move the tripod in any position you want. Now, this one here has the twist legs, and honestly, this works fine. I think this is good. I've had no issues with legs coming out. So for me, BREW is gonna get 5 stars for this deal because, again, having this for 3 years and using this pretty much almost every single day, I've had no problems with it. So very, very happy with this, and I cannot recommend this tripod and geared head enough. All right, so the gimbal that I'm using is the Ronin S2. Now I have tried the S2 and the SE2, but I've honestly landed on the fact that I'm just going to keep one gimbal and I'm gonna keep the Ronin S2. Now my video production side for real estate has sort of went a little bit stagnant. I haven't done quite as many videos. I've been doing a hell of a lot more photos, and that's just really indicative of the market. As soon as the house hits, it's selling with no additional assistance needed other than you have to have some form of professional photography. So the S2 for me is honestly a win. It's probably the best gimbal that I've used. It's the smoothest gimbal. It's also the one that's the easiest to tune. By the way, if you want me to go ahead and talk about the settings that I use on this, I will do a separate video talking about my specific configuration on this gimbal, because it does matter how you set this up, although it is really easy to get smooth footage from this. But yeah, this for me, I feel like it's smooth enough, it's versatile enough, it's light enough to just be my daily driver. And the fact that with DJI products, especially when it comes to gimbals, there's just no little weird quirks like I had with Zooing or other brands. I just never have a problem with this. I just know it's always going to work, and that's why I continuously use it. The only thing I want to gripe about is this plate here and the fact that I have to have a secondary plate for my camera to slide into. It's a little bit annoying, but as long as you don't lose those plates, you'll be perfectly fine. Alrighty, so I know I go back and forth on my drones, but I have been using my Mavic Air 2 quite a bit. This little guy is super easy to throw in the bag. It's light. I can just carry a really small bag around with me. I have all my unlocks for my geofenced area loaded into this. So when I go to a specific area, DJI is remembering my unlock. So it's not too big of an issue as of right now. It's also small enough and convenient enough where the batteries last a long time. I can throw 2 of them in my bag and I don't have to worry about it taking up a lot of space. The photos actually look really solid out of this camera, and nobody's ever complained that it's not a 20 megapixel camera photo. They don't care. And the video gives me the option to have 4K 60. Now I'll shoot 4K 60 for aerials because the cameras are slightly smaller and the sensors are slightly worse than something like a Panasonic or a Fuji. So I want the maximum resolution out of this, and then I'll downsample it to 1080p. But 4K 60 gives me a lot of room for error. And the Mavic Air 2 has wonderful dynamic range, and it's not as obtrusive as the Mavic 2 Pro. So I've had a lot less issues with this than any other drone that I own right now. So this is my go-to as of right now. So if you're looking for a great choice, this is my go-to drone as of right now. It's been in my bag the most this year. Now, with that being said, I still find myself using my Evo 2 Pro quite a bit as well. When I'm in a really sticky situation where I have a LANC authorization, but DJI is still going to knock me down, I'll float over to my Evo 2 Pro and I will use this. This still has an amazing camera and wonderful battery life. I just don't recommend shooting in the log profile with this. That's sort of a bummer that the log is so damn difficult to work with on the Evo 2 Pro. But the standard profile definitely will give you enough dynamic range, and the photos are absolutely phenomenal. If you shoot brackets, you can get some really amazing shots out of this. It's just the flight controls sort of still bother me with the Evo 2, but I'm not going to gripe too much if it's going to be able to get me through a shoot in a really hard area. So the Evo 2 Pro is my backup drone of choice, even over the Mavic 2 Pro today in 2021. And again, if you missed the video where I did talk about this, this is the Peak Design 30L. They also make this in a 25L. This is the backpack of choice for my real estate photography because it does let me put my drone, my camera, my batteries, basically everything I need in this bag and get into the house. It is somewhat safe. There is one little thing I do want to make mention of is the fact that you do have a door here on the side where it opens, and then you have a matching door on this side. So make sure you have both of these zipped up before you go swinging it on your back. This actually caused me to break a Mavic 2 Pro and a smart controller all in one swift motion because I didn't have one of the doors zipped up. So make sure you have both of the doors zipped up before you go swinging this on your bag. But this is perfect, and it's the perfect travel bag for camera equipment and camera drones. Not for FPV stuff, but for camera drones and camera gear itself. There's dividers in here, and this is absolutely a phenomenal bag. So that's what I would recommend for that. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about are these. These are the SD cards that I use, and I promise you the SD card that you use could make or break some of the jobs that you are working on. This is a Sony Tough Card, and it's the only piece of Sony equipment that I use currently today. The reason why I'm using a Sony Tough Card is because this SD card is in one piece. Listen to it. It's basically made out of, I don't know if it's a hard plastic or almost like an aluminum, but these things are built like brick shit houses. So if you think you're gonna snap it or break it, you won't. And so many times I've had a SD card when I got home, I dropped it, it hit something on the desk, and the SD card would break, and I would be scrambling to try to fix it to get photos off. With these, I don't have to worry about that. This is 128 gig. They are a little bit pricey, but the price you pay for this is going to protect the files that you use. I rather know that I'm not gonna break this when I get home and not have to worry about pissing off a client than to lose files and piss off a client and lose future sales. You always gotta think about that as you're buying gear. You wanna buy things to protect the sale in the future. So the Sony Tough Card is the choice that I use and go with. I have two of these, and that's pretty much more than you'll ever really need. Alrighty, so that's it. That's my entire kit for 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There'll be links in the description below for all of the things I talked about. I will also have a separate paragraph talking about the budget items that I would suggest in 2021. So if you want to check out budget items, there will be a link for that as well. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, as always, stay original and check out our Discord link in the description. We have a whole real estate section where we can interact in real time. It's a lot more constructive and faster than Facebook. See you in the next video.